What's up guys, welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
Ultima consented grudgingly, which caused Damrata to smile.
Your Majesty, I will come to you. Now.
Damrata said those as his final words. He took his final breath before passing away peacefully. Damrata, Lord of the Fist, former leader of the Kingdom of Nazca, and close friend of Rudra Namal Nazca, its united emperor, so came to an end after a long life. Ultima was now alone herself in the arena of an alternate dimension.
That's not enjoyable, I suppose. On me, his heart's core vanished. I also intended to offer it to Sir Rimuru.
Ultima still tenderly embraced Damrata's body with her 12 wings despite that dejected murmur. She claimed all of him as her own, as they had agreed, and the battle between the two was over. A new demon of the fist was born when one Lord of the Fist passed away. Damrata gave one of the deadliest devils in history one of the most horrible abilities known to mankind at the very end of his life. Would he have felt ashamed if he had known about this? Or would he be pleased to find that a third generation will employ his craft? Damrata had left, so there was no way to find out. The survivors would have to carefully consider the consequences.
So I guess I'll have to deal with you, then.
Standing in the middle of the arena, Agera made the statement to Kondu. Kondu silently put a hand on his blade while his brows twitched. He looked across at Carrera rather than responding to Agera.
Avoid worrying. I'll act as a watcher.
Please do not make me laugh. As if I could ever have faith in you.
When Kondu eventually spoke, he was extremely critical. He was stating that since they were both his enemies, they might as well tackle him at the same time. Carrera, though, was untouched.
Perhaps not, in that case. I don't consider 2-on-1 to be a cowardly approach, and nobody is going to go easy on you here. However, this time, Agera wished for it. So don't be concerned about me. Have a good time.
She spoke her piece and then sat down atop the stone wall enclosing the arena as if it no longer mattered. Kondu gave a shrug.
Wow, what a farce. However, at least I respect your spirit.
Then, facing Agera, he pulled out his military sword.
Thank you. Let's get to it now.
A hollow sound abruptly interrupted Agera. He collapsed to the ground while gripping his chest.
You!
Carrera flew in between them after quickly closing the gap. Her blade deflected Kondu's sword as it was about to strike Agera in his head.
At this speed, were you fast enough?
Kondu faced Carrera while holding his military-issue sword in his right hand and a still-smoking Nambu semi-automatic weapon in his left.
You must have believed I would. Agera would have been wiped out if you were doing your business seriously. Am I mistaken?
Kondu had never formally said that he would agree to a match with Agera. Agera was at fault for not making his intentions clear. Furthermore, Carrera, who parried his blade, had a natural understanding that the man had made much too little of an attempt to properly finish him off. A person of Kondu's strength would never have lost in a head-on battle with Agera. They might have had a spirited, pitched combat if they had just used swords, but even so, Kondu's win was unquestionable. Instead, Kondu decided to launch a surprise attack because he was aware that Carrera was standing by. It would be absurd to ever believe a demon's statements, and it would be even more absurd to pay attention to a demon's advice. The golden rule of war was to get rid of all uncertainty you can.
I have no idea what you are talking about. You know, I don't have all day. Don't force me to listen to your utter nonsense.
As though this were all beyond his standards, Kondu sneered at Carrera.
I suppose if you say so. However, I may be your next adversary if you're interested.
By using that sword?
Kondu pointed towards the blade of Carrera. The hit had fractured it, and Carrera knew that with a couple more solid blows, it would be completely broken.
Of course not. Yes, I can get a new one, but I have something even better. Do you understand what I'm saying, Agera?
Sure, that. It is unfortunate that I was unable to engage in combat with a member of my own school, but since you follow my teachings, I cannot hold it against you. I dislike that he made me look foolish and took away my ability to fight.
As he spoke, Agera rose up. His chest wound had already healed. Kondu had fired at him with an eraser bullet, which absorbs and destroys the target's energy in proportion to the magic force it contains. Agera would be having a very tough time getting to his feet right now if it had been a necrosis bullet. Kondu obviously didn't give him his best effort, as Carrera correctly predicted and Agera now understood. But it also meant Agera could continue to battle.
Blade transform.
He changed into a sword, and it goes without saying that Carrera picked it up. Agera was filled with her magic energy, which restored his depleted energies. The blade sparkled, showing that Agera's spiritual power was once again at its peak.
How stupid. If I had thought you were a fellow comrade, I would have excused you.
It's none of your concern because my dependents enjoy fighting.
I see. Well, it doesn't matter right now. The unpardonable sin of mimicking the art's creator was committed by that person. I'm going to do everything I can to make him pay.
The Carrera who had Agera in her possession was equally responsible in Kandu's eyes. He exposed his blatant animosity and demonstrated his seriousness. As he adopted a position, the animosity was audible in his voice. Carrera was on her knees an hour into the match. Kandu was incredibly strong, he was a true master. He was an unimaginable monster to Carrera. Carrera knew she was strong. However, she was also aware that there were others who were stronger. In fact, one would have believed that she wouldn't lose to anyone else even if she couldn't defeat Diablo. Zijin, however, had easily defeated her. She had also been totally outmatched by Velgrand in this war. She was therefore unsurprised that she was at Kandu's mercy. She was actually ecstatic about it. In order to create some distance between herself and Kandu, Carrera rolled on the ground. She then stood up with her blade pointing directly ahead.
Not bad. My sword skills were highly lauded by Agera, yet I am in no way comparable to you.
Silence. That irritates me since you've been restraining me solely with force.
Kandu, too, had an uneasy feeling about Carrera's fighting ability. Since there was no time to waste, he had gone all out right away, not only with his sword attacks but also with liberal amounts of the ultimate skill Sandalphon, Lord of Judgment. But despite his best efforts, he was unable to completely eliminate Carrera, which he found to be both magnificent and terrible. By this time, they had both come to see one another as worthy rivals and the battle grew more intense from that point on. Kandu attempted to slash, but Carrera delivered a powerful punch to stop him. Kandu lightly parried his move and pointed the revolver he was holding in his right hand at Carrera. What Carrera did next made it clear why Kandu felt the need to fire the Dispel bullet, which was loaded inside and designed to render the target's magic inoperable. The arena was surrounded by a gravitational force field without the need for any spellcasting time. Carrera was criticized by Kandu earlier for having brute strength alone, but instead of taking it personally, she simply tapped her strength even further. She wouldn't be impacted by this invocation at all, but she hoped that it would significantly slow Kandu's movements. Kandu chose to respond to this with a Dispel bullet because he anticipated it. His skill variety was a major source of strength. The ultimate skill Sandalphon had a total of 4 effects, and he may use one or the other depending on the situation. The Eraser bullet was a very precise magical attack, detecting the target's essence and draining its energy from the inside. Other bullets were the Necrosis bullet, which destroyed magic-based healing, the Dispel bullet, which obliterated magical effects, and the Removal bullet, which removed its target's defensive barriers. The Judgment bullet, which combines all of these powers into one shot, is another option. Carrera had still dared to use spellcasting intensive magical attacks up until this point. Even if that was in the past at this point, every spell she cast was negated the moment the magic was activated. Kandu had her beat precisely, and he wasn't making any bad decisions. Additionally, he had the freedom to use any kind of bullet he pleased whenever the situation called for it. Carrera could suffer a devastating blow from even one of them if she was unable to evaluate and handle them. If she was even slightly off guard, the duel would be over in an instant. Kandu was keeping his emotions in check as he carefully considered this battle. It was a methodical strategy. Identify the enemy's weak places, ascertain the direction of magical energy flow, and implement effective defenses. All there was to it was that. But Kandu had come to be the strongest in the Imperial armies by adhering to the principles. He was the polar opposite of the sentimental Carrera in that regard, but they shared certain similarities as well. Carrera shook her head and grumbled,
"You're a pain in the ass,"
before politely asking,
"How do you anticipate when I'll cast magic?"
Kandu responded after catching his breath.
It's easy. I was simply considering what I would do in your shoes.
Aha. A pretty straightforward explanation.
Carrera discovered that she was beginning to like Kandu, but at the same time, she became more and more aware that this was an enemy unlike any other. He is reading the magic flow necessary to cast a spell and then precisely cutting it off. And he puts it like that? Come on. What I would do struck her as such a trite justification, but despite her unpleasant reflections about the matter, she was beaming with glee. Being able to use all of your strength against an opponent was pure ecstasy. For instance, Guy attested to the fighting prowess of the demon lord Leon. She was hoping to get into a pleasurable battle with him, but he resisted her provocations. It was quite upsetting and sad, but if she had Kandu right away, she could have a great time. After all, to her, the fight's process was far more significant than the outcome.
That's great, really great. Kandu, am I correct? You're the best adversary I've ever had.
Carrera expressed her deep admiration for him, but Kandu ignored her and snorted. He didn't use words, instead, he used his sword to express his viewpoint. Carrera was the target of a precise slash. His sword line remained steady and was even more beautiful than a master's demonstration, despite the fact that he was only using his left hand to swing. After some time like this, Carrera started to notice one of Kandu's habits. His sword was in his left hand, and his gun was in his right. That was his combat style, but every time he pulled the trigger on his gun, his eyes and finger muscles would unconsciously move in unison, showing the trajectory of the bullet. Even though it was a small vulnerability that only Carrera could have discovered, the flaw was catastrophic enough to perhaps determine the outcome of the fight.
Here!
Carrera swung her blade at just the right moment. Kandu couldn't respond to the movement as he prepared to fire his gun. He forced himself to raise his gun to block Carrera's sword, seemingly without thinking. His reaction time was remarkable, but it wasn't enough to stop Carrera.
I'm not to be taken lightly. I've removed one of your trump cards.
He could only partially withstand the demon's strong assault because of the contorted, off-balanced position he adopted to stop Carrera. He ultimately lost his gun as a result. The Nambu semi-automatic fell to the ground. Carrera was overjoyed with his retaliation against Kandu. But then something started giving her the creeps. Carrera immediately acted on her instincts and jumped away from the area. Kandu cut through the air with his blade.
I blew my opportunity.
Following then, Carrera's severed left arm hit the ground. Her orichalk skeleton was unable to withstand the impact of Kandu's blade.
You!
Carrera became furious. Even though she was shaking in shame, her heart stayed steady enough to acknowledge the reality of the situation. Now she saw that this was the wrong way to overcome Kandu. And now, as if to demonstrate it, Kandu was grasping his military blade in both hands. He appeared to be an entirely different person from before. It was a full image of beauty. Carrera realized that he was trying to make an opening to draw her into all along and that he had never intended to rely on his pistol. Kandu was once more looking down on her the entire time. With just his blade, he was at least equal to her, but he was hiding that the entire time by putting on this act.
He probably intended for that to be an easy way to defeat me, but even a master like him would use deception rather than display his entire range of abilities? It's hard for me to forgive that.
Carrera shouted in response.
How dare you damned humans mock us?
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. A big thanks to the AnimeKouhai patrons who made this video possible. Vethelny, Linnell Scarlett, Khalid, Christian Deshazer, Kel Robs, Divine C. Harris, Aaron Alarcon, DeAndre Nance, Monty Boy 98, D-Man, Jared Bressler, Chad Vota, Chris Guzman. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.